Ladies and gentlemen, please excuse the tardiness. We have had some extreme technical difficulties at our garden because our fuse blew. I have to apologize to all of our attendees. We will do a garden tour, and I will be taking you through a garden not only inside of Canada, but also in Jamaica. Our fuse is first we had a light blow, and then we had a fuse at the site blow, so it's in darkness right now, and Mike and I are kind of scattered trying to figure out how to get things back online so we could show you lovely people I know the amazing plants that we have right now. So you will see them, just not today. Fortunately, I have a whole presentation ready for all of you where we're going to be discussing trichomes up close and personal. Let me see if I can get our special guest. Oh, special guest has arrived. Surprise guest, people, is one of my longtime mentors, one of the people that I hold very, very close to my heart, because this guy has, look, he doesn't know. I don't know if you know this, Marcus Bubbleman, by the way, people. But to us in North America, everywhere in Latin America, you are probably the guy that got so many of us started on making solventless hash from a young age. So I have to attribute to you, sir, the fact that I have this show today and that I'm so engaged with cannabis to this day. I have to say, Marcus, if I hadn't been down with the hash peeps from an early age, I would have never gone to know everything that I got to know. And you are one of the people that's mostly responsible for that. So, brother, thank you so much for giving us your time today. I really appreciate that, Marcus.
Of course. What an honor it is to be on the other side of that experience and to be able to be here today, enjoying your platform with your wonderful community that you've created. And just, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You missed the initial part of the presentation in which I described extreme electrical failure at my grow site. So there's I had a light blow yesterday, and we've been having the fuse. You know how fuses are after they go off a bunch of times, they get weak. My fuse has gone kaput, and I'm waiting for the change to come in the mail. So it's a pretty stressful moment for Mike and me, but he is gonna fix it today because he's right now like hustling to get everything done. And we will be looking at the garden next month. Unfortunately, though, Marcus, it might not be our Canadian garden that we're showing. It might be in Jamaica, that show. I don't know. Marcus, I don't know if you're going to come with us. We're only going for work reasons. I know that it's not very responsible to be traveling right now. Keep in mind, I have to go, but we will be showing you hopefully some outdoor gardens, not just some indoor stuff like we were going to do today. So anyways, coming up. So Marcus, we're here to talk trichomes today. And
Absolutely.
you know, people, I don't know if you people are aware of this, but Marcus is not only one of the people that has really opened my eyes to a lot of trichome science over the years, but also he's one of the best trichome photographers that I have ever. Man, your work is really amazing, brother. I gotta tell you, it's exceptional, visually stunning. So we're gonna share some of that with you guys today. Oh, Mark, are you on mute? Can you say something?
I thought I was. Yeah, I was.
No, there you go.
Yeah, no, I just was saying that thanks for the kind words, but really there are some, well, there's those that came before me, like Monkey from Overgrow, and perhaps your Giddy Ant, two of my mentors for macro photography, two guys that were willing to share all the information and the equipment list and all of that sort of stuff. But since then, there's just so many that have surpassed, where I sort of left off. And there's some amazing photographers out there now on Instagram, Eric Nugshots and Dynasty Genetics and Beer Goggles and a whole long list, Shale and Schwale. There's a bunch of them out there that I want to give props to. That it's really inspiring to see great photography like that. So I know where you're coming from.
Dude, we're going to show some of your pictures today. I'm super stoked to do that. As we show the pictures, unfortunately, we were going to walk through the garden and we were going to use our handheld microscope to look very closely at trichomes live, trying to see if they're mature. We're going to be doing that the next round. And I think, Marcus, hopefully you'll also be joining us for that next session when not only will we look at those trichomes, but then you're going to tell us a few things about how to best extract those trichome heads using nothing but water. Yeah?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We could definitely do that.
Okay. Well, so I'm going to have to adapt my material to the fact that I don't have my beautiful plants in front of me. To go over a little bit of, yeah, Kelsey, absolutely. Ice water hash, yes, the bubble bags is, I'll tell you something, guys, when Mexicans come to Canada and you love weed, there's one thing you must buy in Canada. One thing you must buy is your bubble bags, because imagine for a Mexican, you have all this weed, but most of it is not cured right. They didn't give it the right love. You got bricks and bricks of this stuff. With the bubble bags, you can actually collect some heads and smoke something worthwhile. So I have to say that, every single one of my friends, Marcus, that comes to Canada, every single one of them, they save their money before they come and they buy their bubble bag set at your store, Fresh Headies. Just so you know. Just so you know, bro. Yeah.
When I first went to Jamaica with bubble bags, which I think would have been like 2000 or 2001, and I gave away a bunch of sets and turned on a bunch of people, and we made some really nice product, and it was historical. That immediately changed the narrative and the dialogue I had with Mexican people, with people from Colombia, all throughout Central and South America, like you just mentioned, as well as Mexico. So basically, I would be like, listen, guys, like, you have a huge advantage. You don't even know what a huge advantage you have because of the access that you have to inexpensive cannabis. Doesn't matter how good it is, start the journey, start extracting, get that resin off, have these experiences, get lucky, and find something that doesn't look so great to the naked eye because you're so focused on thinking what every brickweed is, but then you get in there and you extract it and you're like, whoa, this is actually like beautiful, melty, exotic flavored hash. And so that's the advantage that people have in countries where cannabis isn't $3,000 a pound. And who cares if it's not that good? The bottom line is you live in a country that clearly it's not that hard to grow. And if it's not that good, then get some genetics, learn a little bit, and put them in the ground.
See, I have to say, people, Canadians have been, look, if you've been smoking since the late 80s in this country, you've been very blessed. So your concept of quality is skewed compared to the rest of the world. What Marcus just said, I can't understate it, how much the narrative changed for us in countries like Mexico and Jamaica and South America, where, cannabis meant one thing to us before water extraction came around, and it meant a different thing afterwards. It created a different environment. It created a different subculture. It is absolutely an understatement, really, to say that it was historic work, brother. It's foundational. It's just, for me, in Latin America, before I got into hashish making and into hash culture, I was you don't think about all the things you need to think about when you make hash. You know what I'm saying? It creates a different type of consumer. It creates a different type of relationship to the plant. I attribute, really, my career today to the fact that I became a geek about that kind of stuff because of hash. You just smoke flower all day, and you see this in Jamaica and in Mexico and in South America. You smoke flower all day, you have a limitation to the way that you perceive the flower, the way you think about it, the way you interact with it. When you do flower and you do extract, you get a full range of exactly what you're talking about. For me, as a cannabis sommelier, you just, that word wouldn't even exist in my head if it wasn't for the fact that I learned to think in that way about the trichome. And Marcus, you know what, brother? That's really what I want to do with this show today. Is I want to, you know how hyped you and I are about, the size of the trichome head, how thick the neck is, how easy that neck will break off for us, all of that stuff.
Sure.
I want the public that's joining us today to get in on that hypeness, to be in on that. Really, why are Adolfo and Marcus so hyped on having that big fat head, but not a thick stem? You know what I'm saying, guys? There's a very specific shape to the trichome we're looking for, and there's specific type of size mesh we will use according to the shape and size of a particular trichome. So that's why everything we're talking about today links up in this beautiful way with our next session that will be about how to remove those trichome heads cleanly without a bunch of green matter, a bunch of vegetable matter. Yeah?
Absolutely. And, you know, just to go back for a second on what you were saying on how it changed your perspective on cannabis, it did the same thing for us in North America, but because of prohibition and the high cost of cannabis, we first looked at it as a trim experience, and everyone started looking at something they used to throw away. Within 2 years of bubble bags being on the market, you would have to buy it. Like, trim was gone. There was no more accessibility. People that just wanted to get a free bag of trim and do some edibles or any other thing, that was over. Like, people suddenly understood the value of the trim. To me, it was always about the value, i.e. the quality and the purity of the resin. That to me was the value. I tried not to compare the value to a monetary amount, because to me it's like, well, you know, I can work a job where I just pull a lever and make money. This is something that's like really special that you grow and you spend your time on. It's, you know, we call it a crystal, not that it is a crystal, but when you think of that sort of crystal mentality and how crystals hold vibrations, and now you're there growing it with your frequencies interacting with these crystalline substances, and it's, you know, it's just, I've always thought that somehow cannabis has something we can't explain. And sure, there's a bit of it is cognitive dissonance, where every single person that grows something thinks it's the greatest thing in the world. But is there something more to it? Is there something where in that relationship of you growing that cannabis, that it's producing what you need for you? And so I've always had that sort of faith in cannabis, that it has that ability, and that I wouldn't put it past it just because we haven't figured out a way to quantify it or categorize it.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, I had a talk with a friend the other day from Mexico, and he told me, Adolfo, after trying good concentrates, he says, I'd rather have 3 grams of good concentrate than a kilo of bunk weed, he would tell me. You know the brick weed we have down there, brother? So he tell me, you know, give me 3 grams of concentrate and I'll trade you a brick, a kilo brick for that. He says, any day. And really, that's how I think anybody that's consumed for a long time, I know you're like that, Marcus, you know that I'm like that, we all end up in the same place. You know, we all end up with a same concept of what quality is. This is what you find with all people that have dedicated their life to this plant. You know, Marcus and I, it's funny because, bro, the first day we met, we were talking the same language. You know, I felt like I found a brother immediately, just the same way like when I go to Jamaica and I meet a Rasta that's been doing that his whole life. We all think the same way about the plant. We all have the same opinions of what should happen with it, also in terms of social impact, right? Because it's been that for us. It's been this leader in our lives. And man, all I have to say is today, what I'd really like is for everybody here to know at a fundamental level what a trichome is. Very, very basic. We're going to give them a very, very basic explanation. And then why it's so important that when we're involved in removing that head, okay, and when we're doing extracts from that amazing plant, that we do have grades and that we do have very clear understanding of what high grade hash is and what full melt is, and why it's fine to make traditional hash that has more material in it, but you need to have those grades. And for right now we're in an industry where people are calling stuff full melt that is not full melt. Marcus, you know that, right?
Since the beginning of you know, coining the phrase full melt over 20 years ago, and it's why Skunkman, Sam, and I eventually came out with the FMCD quote, which was full melt clear dome, which was like, listen, if you're not getting these giant clear domes bubbling up and then it dropping like almost like water melting off of ice, that's not full melt. But when you first see it melt and you don't understand the differences, I should really do you just inspired an amazing video I'm going to do. I'm going to get all these different grades of hash, macro video, show the people the difference between a char, a non-melt, a semi-melt where it's like lava,
Yes.
kind of like slowly
Yes.
bubbling, but not, versus a full melt, which is just like bubbling like oil on a pan and then just disappearing into the screen completely. So that would give the people the idea of, you know, when we speak, it only counts if we have the same definitions for the words that we're using. If you have the same expectations of those definitions of the words you're using that I do, then we're going to get along. If you don't, we might get to a point where our foundations don't agree with one another based on, you know, incomplete descriptions of our definitions of these terms that we use over and over again. So
look, people, remember, okay, if there is residue on your piece, and I know a lot of you out there don't dab, so maybe we need to take a quick step back. Let's define full melt for that, Marcus. You'd be the best person to give us a quick, succinct definition of what defines full melt.
well, okay, so first let me tell you the story of how the full melt term came to be. Okay, so
Yeah.
this is me in 1990. No, it would be 2000. I think 2000, because I started Bubble Bag in 99 of March. Actually, it could have been November of 99, actually, where I went to the Cannabis Cup. I really connected for the first time with my mentor, Skunkman Sam. And he had been kind of walking around, and eventually when he finally kind of let me into his inner circle, I got to, you know, stand with him and listen to him. And man, you can't imagine, like, this guy was a huge inspiration to me. He was like, he's just done so much for cannabis. I see him as an amazing individual. It was so blessed to be able to get into his life and become a friend and have him as a mentor. And so, you know, he's now shown me hash unlike anything I've ever seen in my life. Even the nicest bubble I've ever made, his dry sift absolutely puts it to shame, because he's traveled to all the hash producing countries, collected the seeds, but gone back to his legal greenhouse with DEA export licenses for shipping around to different labs in the 80s and 90s so they could be testing it and sharing information. So he did everything the right way so very long ago that it was hard not to be inspired by this man. First guy to take out an ad, Sadhu Sam's water extraction secret. He knew about water extraction in the 80s. You know, he's got this secret sift tech. And so he starts smoking this sift with me that he grew in his greenhouse, that he collected. It was like a skunk #1 dry sift that was just, I mean, I can't even explain it. It had to be 70% THC with like 15% terpenes. He was the first one to show me in 2000 that terpenes modulate the effects of cannabinoids in his apartment. He had the pure cannabinoids and the pure terpenes, and we bioassayed them, and he would be like, how do you feel now? And so that was really the beginning of our conversation on terpene modulation. So I'm sitting here with him now at my booth, and we're puffing, and he got this just very simple little pipe, nothing fancy, you know, a screen in there, very, very tight mesh screen, the tightest I'd ever seen. I asked him about it. He said he had them custom made. Go figure. And you know, at the Cannabis Cup, he would very often hit like fresh screens and just like dump the screens out, and people would be picking them up and puffing them out of their pipes. It was really quite a hilarious thing. You could follow these screens around to find Sam. But we're standing there and we're talking and we're puffing, and I'm like, oh my God, this is beautiful. It's full melt. And he's like, yeah, it's full melt. That's what I call it. And then he goes, and when it's really high quality full melt, it makes clear domes, which of course, when you show my phone later, we're going to show you an absolutely beautiful, stellar visual example of what is full melt clear dome. Full melt clear dome was about as far as we went with defining it. Jeff Church, along with the Bazaar brothers down in California, Josh Corpy and Space, they came up with the star rating. And that was the 6-star, 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star. And it's a very simple explanation, basically drips away to nothing, you know, and leaves almost nothing on your dab rig, versus chars out and leaves a big black thing. Fletcher Watson from Archive Seeds came out years later and said, what if we weigh the dab, we hit the dab, and then we weigh the banger, you know, weigh it prior, you know, tear that banger. So you put the bubble in, you hit it at a vaporized temperature, 470 Fahrenheit. Once it's done bubbling and it's finished, you take that out and you weigh it again, and that would even give you a more precise example of what was the quality of that. Because if your hash is losing less than 10%, or losing 90% to 95%, anything over 90, in my opinion, is going to be like a 5.5 to a 6-star. If you're over 95, that is a 6-star hash. It's as high and as good as it gets. You put it on a dab rig, it barely has anything on the Q-tip when you clean it up. And that's basically perfectly grown, incredible genetics where all the synthases are present and turned on for said profile, terpene and cannabinoid, grown to absolute perfection, processed and extracted to absolute perfection, dried to absolute perfection, and it makes that product. That's a 6-star.
Gotcha. So you're doing, that's the, it's an extension of the traditional hippie, right? The traditional hippie way was 5-star, right? You're adding like an extra star for the full melt category that didn't exist during hippie times, right? Is that basically what's happening, Marcus?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's just we're filling voids, right? We're filling
you're
vacuums.
extending traditional culture.
Yeah, as we change and as we, listen, it's like, you don't think immediately the Jamaican people took to water hash when they saw the incredibleness of pulling out a bag of trim, throwing it in, and getting like 11 grams of hash out of a little 5-gallon system. It was like, are you kidding me? Like collecting that shit off sledgehammers and knives and all the way they do the finger hash. It's not even comparable. If you took this to Milana, Himachal Pradesh, that whole area of northern India, Parvati Valley, you would blow their minds. And people have taken bubble bags there, and of course it blows their minds. They're like doing this to collect resin heads, and all of a sudden someone comes along and says, man, I can collect hundreds of grams of those each batch. Let's do it. And it'll be way cleaner, and not have body oils and odors on it. And it's like, because those body odors, they tend to vaporize at a lower temperature than the compounds we're looking for.
So, and just so to clarify, people, if you're not aware, what he's referring to is the making of charas with the hand, where basically people rub the cola like this with their 2 hands. And then in Jamaica, at least, they'll take a warm knife afterwards. And with the warm knife, they scrape it off of their bare hands. So like Marcus was saying, there's going to be some odor of your hand and particulate of hand. So bubble bags are way, way better to go. Marcus, maybe you could I'm going to answer Dan's. We're going to answer Dan's question in a second, but maybe you could settle this point that Kelsey brought up. That I don't know if Kelsey, this was your own opinion or if you found this online, but that people are saying that full melt is a type of bubble hash, but that they call it bubble hash because, or that they call it full melt because it's highly concentrated. But the term full melt implies more so that it leaves no residue behind, right? That it's like fully melted and evaporated, correct?
Yeah, I mean that's not completely incorrect. They just don't know the actual story of the people who coined these terms. So they're just learning what they can. And on the outside source, yeah, sure, full melt is the best quality resin, purified to the best purification possible. And then you hold a flame to the material, and it liquefies and bubbles and boils. So yeah, it's not incorrect by any means, but it reminds me of someone from like Forbes or something that was like, we want you to do a thing on full melt. And then he just went on the internet and looked up a bunch of things. And he got halfway there, but he didn't quite get, like, depending on the article, you'd want to be like, well, let's find out who these people are that coined these terms. Let's find out what they were thinking when they did it.
And do we call bubble hash because it bubbles when you heat it, or is it about the bubbles that develop inside the bag?
This is another great thing, because I even saw people in the quote going, "Oh, this is what it refers to," and it's like, well, I'll tell you, I'll be honest, okay? Like, when I started the company in March of 1999, a little before I finally got incorporated and got everything going in March, but I was probably a month or two before that starting to buy materials and sewing machines and computers and digital cameras. But it was a multitude of things. It was that that these glandular trichome heads looked like bubbles sitting on a stalk. It was that the water was bubbling and frothing.
Also,
and it was that the hash melted and bubbled. So it was this bubble all the way through. I was like, I was like, this is telling
Okay.
me loud
Oh,
and
man.
clear that this is the direction I have to go with this.
I love it. I love it. Man, I love that I just got told that story. That's so sick, man. Straight from the horse's mouth, people. Come on, that's awesome. That's a
Well,
CannaReps
you know what's
historical moment right there, man.
you know what's crazy though, and it's somewhat like part of me is like, just don't even care or whatever, and part of me is like, no, it's the history, and I refuse. It's like,
Yeah, of course.
like. So lots of people have rewritten the history. There's all sorts of different stories and all sorts of rewritten things, and I just, you know what, I stick to my truth. I have a pretty good memory, and I also have everything, like, basically on the internet. Like, since I started, everything's on the internet. You can just go look at all
Yeah.
the early things, aside from Overgrow, which hopefully one day maybe
hmm
they'll put up all that old information that we had, because that was a lot of lost information.
I remember Overgrow. Overgrow was one of my go-to places for content back in the
Of
day.
course.
Such a shame that it stopped, man. Such a shame. Let's answer Dan's question here. About Hashin. Is Hashin actually the breakdown of myrcene via exposure to light, or is that an urban legend? Is Hashin an urban legend as a whole? My opinion is that it's not. What's yours, Marcus?
We've talked about it on Hash Church. Dr. Mark Scaldone had tons to say about hashishene. And yes, that it definitely was found and exists. I don't think the plant's creating it. It seems to be some sort of a degradation of another terpene.
Mhm.
But yeah, we never really got past that. Like, Mark came on, he talked a lot about it. He's a chemist. He's got his PhD in chemistry, and he's very intelligent, and he put it very eloquently, much more eloquently than I can put it. But I would say, have I ever had it? Definitely not, that I know of. Definitely not isolated by itself. So I would really have no idea what it was offering or what it was doing. But love the name, love the concept and the idea. And yeah, I would say if you want a really good answer on hashishene, go to the Hash Church group on Facebook and join that and ask Dr. Mark Scaldone, because he's there for you. When you have a really good question, any of the panelists on Hash Church they surf that page, they're watching, they're looking to answer and help.
And for those of you who have not attended Hash Church, I have been, I'm not always there, but I try to go as much as I possibly can. It's been a long running, very successful show that Marcus has been doing on YouTube. And I highly recommend, I don't just recommend, I highly recommend that you attend, students and friends. Now, I would like to provide, because this was part of what we were doing today at the garden. We're just going to jump into a little bit of the content. Marcus, why don't we give people a layperson's description of what a trichome is? Yeah?
Sure.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about them while you're showing the pictures, or do you want me to just get into
Yeah,
it
yes,
first?
I do. Yes, I
Because
do. Let me start.
yeah,
Yeah.
cannabis has like more than 3 varieties of trichomes. Just 3 are glandular. So there are other varieties of trichomes that actually play important roles in the plant as well. And I photographed them with my macro camera and have a really nice selections of photos. You can look at them here when he shares them. You can also open another browser if you so feel.
Mhm.
Bubblemanbrand.com under photography. You can get a look at these same images. So I think it's about 40 or 50 images. There's a classic, me on a zip line over a beautiful cannabis grow. RIP to Black Paw. It was Black Paw's grow. That was a BC Compassion Club grow. That was always sold to the Compassion Club. Great guy.
Okay.
He's passed on
Okay.
since. So
So here
we're
we
good.
are before the trichomes, people. We need to start here. Okay, this is before trichome development comes around.
Yep.
You've got
So
this little baby. Go ahead, please, Marcus.
that's a
Oh no, sorry about that.
25-year-old seed. That was a 25-year-old seed you just had opened up there.
25-year-old seed.
Yeah, go to photography. It should be in the middle somewhere. That's a 25-year-old seed from Jamaica, a lamb's bread that I collected in 1995. Oh, did he bump himself right out of the room? Well, we'll wait for him to come back. I'm still here anyway. So yeah, that was a 25-year-old Jamaican seed I collected the first time I ever went to Jamaica in 1995. The guy that brought me the flower, it was absolutely spectacular, very exotic, but it also had this West Coast feel to it. And he said actually that his friends had brought out cultivars from Oregon and they crossed it with this lamb's bread, and that's what that seed was the result of. So welcome back.
I don't know what happened to me, but the good thing is we're all still here. I'm going to share my screen again, okay? Give me 1 second.
Yeah, I just kept going. That's the worst when you're hosting something and you get bumped out and you're like, "Ooh, geez, I wonder if it's still going." Shout out to technology for whatever reason. Whenever you get knocked out of your own chat that you're hosting, it's happened to me many times. It doesn't stop the event, which is amazing.
Marcus, what are we looking at here? This little casing.
Well, I can't see it anymore. I don't have any. I
Oh.
lost the screen share, so I'm not.
Okay.
Someone did ask me, where did I go in Jamaica? Chantel Philpotts. I went everywhere. Everywhere. I rented cars and I drove everywhere on the island. There's literally nowhere in Jamaica that I have not been. I can promise you that in the 20 plus years that I've been going. So that little casing is called, it's either a bitument or an, oh, it was Ryan Lee helped me with this. This is Ryan Lee, of course, who you had on your show recently, good friend of mine, Chimera. He was the one that helped me with this. So this membrane, and if you want to go back a few pictures, I think there's even, like, if we start we can kind of go through them, not the seedling ones, but is that casing the first one after that shot? Okay, so that's also, okay, so that casing, if you look at that little brown pad, that sits in the bottom of a calyx, okay? And coming out of that would be like a stigma or a pistillate hair. And and we have photos of all this at the end we'll get into, but when the tiny little piece of male pollen, oh, he's bumped out again. When the tiny little piece of male pollen goes onto that stigma, pistillate leaf, hair, it goes and travels down inside, goes right into the bottom, creates that pad, creates a seed husk around it, creates the embryo, and basically that creates one seed in the cannabis plant. And that's in the macro photos that we'll look at it a little bit later on. But if you guys, because we are getting bumped out and it might have something to do with him sharing his screen, if you do go
Marcus, you try sharing from your end, okay? Try sharing from your end, because obviously something is not right with my computer. So
okay,
yeah.
Let me,
all you do is
sharing.
Yeah, you go to the screen sharing option at the bottom, and then you click. You actually have to click on the thing, and then you go okay, and it'll run us right into it.
This gives me two options. Episode 5, analyze this. 40
No
slides.
Yeah,
and then
not
it gives
that.
me share your screen.
There you go. Share your screen. That's what you click on.
I don't want to share my entire screen, do I?
Well, all you have to do is go to the window. I mean, I can try doing it for mine. Sorry about the technical difficulties. This is standard Chronicles stuff, by the way. This happens every show. This platform.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I'll open it up and see if we can't get this proper.
I don't know how to fix this actually.
Sharing my screen. Okay, so can you actually see that right now?
Yeah, it's working finally. Hopefully you won't get passed out like me.
Okay, exactly. Yeah. So let's just there's some cannabis seeds from DNA Genetics. They wanted to do a liner for one of their hats and have a cool macro picture of seeds, so I did that for them. Longtime friends. There's the old hash plant, aka the champagne from British Columbia back in the late
legendary.
90s. It's legendary for sure.
I used to grow that 2002, man. That was my thing. 2002, baby. Such a good plant. Oh my God.
Yeah,
beautiful.
I'll tell you. It's totally ridiculous. And the Jamaican lamb's bread cross anyway. Really another nice close one up. You see the seedling coming out, and it's just almost, just so trippy, like a slug coming out. If you look closely here, you can see how sharp the edge of the seed husk is. Do you see the edges on the seed husk here? They're sharp. Okay, we're going to get to why we have that bitumen piece later on. So this piece came out of the calyx. It's basically the seed coat. It's basically where the seed, this was wrapped around the seed. And so when the embryo comes out, right, the seedling, this piece right here, the cotyledon, when it comes out of the seed husk, this little membrane helps it get out without tearing or ripping, which basically kills the seedling. So you have a little, there it is wrapped around, and many growers may have seen this. If you grow from seed, you've taken these off before. If you leave them on, they can actually damage the seedling and stunt the life cycle of the plant. And I've seen plants never recover from it actually. So that's just the empty shell. You can see on the inside there again, the sharp edges, and why you need that membrane to help the plant get out. So I just basically pulled that, and you can see where the cotyledon is where that brown pad is, which is pretty neat how it all produces. This is of course the cotyledon, the first true set of, not true set, but the first set of leaves on most plants come out like these round cotyledons. And then we get into a type of trichome that is non-glandular, but is just as important in the production and in the growth of the plant itself. So this is the center of the epicaudal. This is the epicaudal coming out of the cotyledon. These are the first true sets of leaves. These are the leaves that are serrated edges, right? They're still connected, so they're coming out as one piece, almost like a tongue. And you're going to see through the macro photographs where they actually separate. But if you look at the bottom right and you see those trichomes, those little legs pushing off, what that does is they grow out and they pull this very wet material off of the body of the cotyledon, keeping it from tearing. It's almost like wet tissue paper at that point. If you touch that, it's done again for anyone that's ever grown seeds. They're very delicate. And that's just a close-up shot of those trichomes, clearly not glandular, but trichomes nonetheless. I'm not exactly sure the name of these particular ones. I know the name of the cystolith hair, you know, the capitate stalk, the capitate sessile, and the bulbous. I know those four, but there are two others, and this is one of those others. Very important for the production of the plant. As you can see from a little bit more of a distant shot, it's really leaning on the cotyledon right now. It's almost attached, and you can see inside here how it looks very wet. And it is, it's super delicate. So as it gets a little healthier, those trichomes start to look almost like feathers or hairs now. It's much stronger. It's holding itself up. The cotyledon is opening as it's growing outward, but you can still see on the top here, the two leaves are still joined. Those are the tips of the cotyledon, and they come out joined. Now, I haven't photographed this 1,000 times, so for all I know, this was an anomaly, but this is something I photographed, so I'm going to share it. Yeah, some stigma hairs kind of holding on to each other like they're buddies.
How beautiful.
Also extremely important in the production of seed. Without them, you know, you're not, it's literally the fallopian tube you're looking at right there and the uterus. So this is a root on on a clone. So it's got the big tap root with some really cool, beautiful little fine hairs. This is a very young root that was just starting to come out of a plug that I had it in. This is back to the cotyledon, and this shows you that the plant, now these are other hairs, most likely cystolith, but possibly a different name. And you see the glandular trichomes. You see the round bulbous heads on the inside of the leaf. This plant is like 5 days. This seedling is like 5 days old. So anyone that tells you can spray in veg because there's no glandular trichome production, but you can't in bloom, doesn't have a microscope. And this is a very young epicaudal. This is the first true set of leaves. Now you can see very serrated. The serrades look huge because of how close up the photo is and how small the leaf is. And you can clearly see glandular trichomes as well as cystolith hairs growing all over the plant, as well as anthocyanin, which is creating that pinkish purple color throughout the center of the leaf. And that'll be inside the trichome stalks as well, which we will show in some photographs here in a little bit.
Marcus, that plant was already that wasn't the first set of leaves, right? It would have been the first set of leaves in that section of growth, right? It's not normal to find
Well,
that many.
it's I don't know. I mean, yeah, take a picture with a microscope. You can't see this with the naked eye, but if you take a
Yeah,
camera like mine and you look at it, you'll see there's more than meets the eye, is what I'm saying. So don't get trapped in a prison by your senses. Use the
yeah,
prosthetics that are available to you, like microscopes and macro lenses.
yeah, man. Well, it's shocking how much there is for such a young growth, eh? Amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. It definitely shows that you shouldn't be spraying it with anything.
No doubt.
I thought this was cool. This was a refraction, one of my only refractions. You can see the cannabis leaf that the plant is growing on refracting inside the glandular trichome of the capitate stalked trichomes. Those are the two tall ones. The shorter ones are capitate sessile, and then there's a couple of anchored, curved cystolith hairs very close to that capitate sessile on the left side that's out of focus.
So our students are exposed to the difference between bulbous, sessile, and capitate stalked. Could you quickly just go over the differences in maybe in terms of microns? Remember, students, a micron is 1/1000th of a millimeter. Tiny, 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 tiny.
Yeah, I mean, from a hash standpoint, we really want the sessils and the capitates. Those are the big bulbous heads. You'll notice that as you look at those ones, the stalks tend to curve inside, making a nice little area for it to splice and break off quite easily. The bulbous sit on a single stipe cell, like the ones you saw on the apicotal true set of leaves on seedling. Those don't seem to have stalks, but under microscope you can see that they actually are sitting on a single stipe cell, and they're very hard to extract using mechanical screen separation techniques like dry sifting or even like bubble hash. So they tend to be the differentiator from the oil guys to the water hash guys. You've got the oil guys on one side who are getting the full yields because they're able to use solvents to extract everything. They're able to get all those bulbous heads off. You give the same cultivar to a hash maker and they're like, wow, I got like 13% return. How did you get 20? It's like, well, I got the 7% that made up, which is actually much more than 7%. It would be about almost 30% of the total glandular trichome produced.
Would you say that we're looking at some trichome heads that are somewhere around the range of like 120, maximum 150 micron? Have you
Yeah,
seen
I've seen
bigger
them bigger.
heads than that?
I've seen them bigger. I've pulled full melt bubble out of 160 and 190 in Switzerland when I was visiting Breeder Steve in the early 2000s in Lugano. Yeah, and that was published in Weed World. No, Red Eye magazine published that photo. I took a photo of full melt from the 190 all the way to the 25. All of it melted into a liquid.
So
And
just
so,
so everyone knows, typically you can only get full melt at max like 120 because when you go above that, you're not getting the right size for the head, basically. So to have a 160 is like, whoo-hoo. And by the way, Marcus, am I correct to say that most cultivars around our region, like if you have more narrow leaf inheritance, it tends to be a little bit more on the 75 to 95 range for full melt, whereas broadleaf tends to be a little bit more toward the 120. Is that accurate? Or
well, I mean, yes and no. In reality, the narrow leaf drug cultivars that are grown in tropical environments tend to produce much smaller heads.
yeah, yeah.
So you'll get really great, quality, if you will, in the 25, 45, 73. Here in North America, whether they're growing sativas or not, they're not doing it under the proper sun. They're doing it under artificial lights. And so all the heads in North America really tend to be in this 73 to 120 range that everyone can agree upon is like the best. I've seen it all around the world too. But I've seen anomalies happen too. So I'm quick to, not get into an argument with someone that's saying, no, the 25 is the best. It's like, well, you know what? The 25 of their material very well could be the best. And this is a great example of capitate stalks next to capitate sessiles. This is from another longtime buddy. I grew this cultivar myself, but it was from an old friend, Subcool. He had a genetics company. He passed away recently as well and did tons of amazing work. Weed Nerds, if you don't know, he started a whole kind of following. And this was his Astro Boy, which really became the watermelon because it had such a fruity flavor profile. But really beautiful blue trichomes on this. Obviously, it's from, you know, the terpenes and the maturity of the heads. You can see that they're mostly going foggy. There's still a little bit of clarity in some of them that look like crystal balls, but they're starting to get full fog. And this plant was cut down not too long after this. You know, one of the things I want to mention is the myth. Now, this is a tiny little fan leaf. Look at how many trichomes are on there. Now, do you see on this, if you look at it for a while, do you notice there are amber heads top right of the photo? 3 on the leaf, and then there's a few more on the edge of the leaf. So, you know, people that say they look at their plants and when they get 50% amber, they cut them down. That is the most utter and ridiculous baloney that you could possibly ever think. Like you're deluding yourself if you think that's, first of all, there's literally like 1 trillion of these glandular trichome heads. And if all you're ever looking at is the top bud, it's not really an accurate description. And as a macro photographer, what I've noticed photographing trichomes is that they're always in almost all of the stages: clear, cloudy, and amber. It's like, I don't think I've ever, unless you grew a plant like 2 months past its due, could you turn every head amber. And generally, the heads that turn amber, what I've noticed as a macro photographer, is from leaves or stalks that have been damaged, or from the internal system of the plant realizing that its cycle is coming to an end and it just stops pumping nutrients the same way that it was. It just starts slowing down. It's getting towards the end of its cycle. And when you get that entropy in the leaf, that's when you see the trichomes starting to really amber out.
Absolutely, and Alexander, you'd be correct to say that just a little bit of, look, that when you take down your plant is part of the art form of growing. Like some people like to take down a particular cultivar a bit early, some people like to take it down a bit late, but what defines late or early is sometimes how a particular grower or extractor has a preference for the palate or a preference for the yield or whatever it may be. Point
100%.
being, it's all part of people that are like, oh, extraction is just science, there's no art. I'm like, hold on, you gotta pick the cultivar, you gotta pick when you take your cultivar down, what you fed your cultivar, how you grew it, right? Then what type of ice did you pick? Did you cryogenically freeze your bud before or not? All of these little details play into your final product, and all of that is a choice that has to be made. That is not just a scientific choice. It's a choice that is made based on the understanding of how things render on your palate, how things actually react to heat, how it looks, how it, you know, all of these little details are all in the trichome. It's all in in the trichome, and how you collect that trichome to such a specific level that, I mean, you're really going to get a feel for that by hanging out with Marcus this session and next session, because you'll get a feel. I mean, we're going to do more talk about how we actually remove those trichome heads next time. But I mean, anyways, your pictures right now, man, are also this myth that you talked about, brother, because this thing is getting perpetuated right now where people are like, no, I'm not going to take down until I see half my heads brown. And I'm like, some plants are going to wait. They're going to start pulling back trichome heads before they go brown, okay?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Look at this plant. This plant is about to be cut down. It was probably cut down a week later. You can't even see any amber heads. This was grown by a very good friend of mine, Remo, the urban grower. This is the UBC chemo.
Oh, yeah.
And so one of my favorite photos, this image has been around. It was on the front cover of Frank 151 hip hop magazine on the East Coast. It's been in a variety of magazines. It's been on like, it's just it's such a great shot. You have to understand, I don't do stacks. I don't stack my images by taking 100 shots and expanding my depth of field. This is the single depth of field that I was given, which is like a millimeter. And I managed to get this shot with it, with the resin in the foreground on the bottom right. as
Dude,
well as the
anthocyanin.
entire tip of the leaf. Yeah, the anthocyanin
Wow.
rich leaves and the bluish trichomes. And it's just, it speaks to me, this image. Whenever I see it, I think it's probably one of my favorite trichome shots I've ever taken. So
So much purple, bro. My God. Yeah.
goodness, bugs like cannabis. This was Medikush that John Berfello left at my house. He put it out at my house like a bouquet, and we found this little bumblebee, and he was kind of slowed down, and I just put him on the plant, and he started climbing on it, and he climbed up to the top of it, and I snapped this little picture of him smiling. I wanted you to see the bottom right, how small a trichome is compared to an insect.
Wow.
You know, and you can see trichomes stuck on his right front legs there. He's got trichomes and cannabis remnants. It's, you know, I don't know if he's got an endocannabinoid system, but if he does, you know, that was probably a good day. You can
Hey,
see
Marcus,
terpenes. Yeah.
do you think that that bee was also getting stung a little bit by the fact that, you know, that how much of a role do you think that trichomes play in nature for fending off pests, for fending off all of these things that could land on the plant and cause problems for it? Is it mostly UV function for the plant, or do you think it's primarily fending off pests? What do you think the number one contributor of this little portion of the plant does for its survival? What do you think?
Well, it's the loyalty that a dog offers to a man that made the dog such a popular animal and such a incredible flourished species. Well, the cannabis did it with the resin, you know, because it wasn't its fiber and it wasn't its cellulose that got our attention. I can promise you. It was its terpene profile and its cannabinoid profile. And the interaction with human beings and the proliferation of this plant worldwide, thanks to human beings, I have zero doubt in my mind that it's us.
Ah, so it wasn't as much about fending off animals as it was attracting this animal. That's what you're saying. I love that, man. That's very
Well,
wise.
sure. I mean, see, we know that seeded plants require insects and birds to spread their seeds, but cannabis jumped right over them and just, you know what, you guys can have some too, but I'm going to get humans to spread my seeds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, I've always said it's like a jitomate, you know, the old tomato, so tiny, tiny, tiny in the jungle in Mexico. And now we have this, humans did that. That did not happen naturally. So gorgeous. Oh, this shot is beautiful, man. This one with the amber, with the amber in the head.
Yeah, I believe it's an Afghan bull rider that I got from Jeff Tech years ago. Yeah, you can see the terpenes breaking down, producing that sort of color inside the head, and just a really cool little section, like little checkers and dots throughout the head. Once again, it's a very old picture. I took this one in like 2008, so there's like sensor dust dots on it, little things that I didn't know back in the day that you can kind of clean up. And I always loved this one, the brotherly, you know, the pound out, the two trichomes growing right together like two powerful fists. And they're even different shades. One's lighter and one's darker. I always just really loved this image.
Yeah, yeah. When I first saw it, I was like, does that thing have two heads? I was like, no, I could see the stem from the other ones, like, whoa, leading into each other.
Yeah, and even the energy, the energy between them, this blasting sort of colorful, you know, multiple colors coming off between the little spaces in between. I love the image. Now this next image is a very powerful image. This next image is what cannabis looks like after I've washed it in my bubble bags.
That's from water extraction, Marcus. That's not solvent, right? Because otherwise the next would be gone too, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. This is just from water extraction.
Yeah.
You know, nice and clean how all the heads have popped. And doesn't it surprise you to see how round those stalks actually are?
Clean break, man. That's good work, brother. Damn.
Oh yeah, and the whole plant looked like that too. Like every little bit that we grabbed. And then, you know, when you get them all off nice and clean.
This is what it looks like, people. That's full melt, right, Marcus?
Oh my God, yeah. This is from Cuban grower. him and his wife grew and produced these resin heads, got them to me in Jamaica one year. I photographed them, and yeah, super props to them for just doing a spectacular job. Pure heads, caviar, you know. And then this shot was taken years earlier at Skunkman Sam's. He's been doing this very same thing for 35 years. You can see his heads are much more mature.
Oh, and again, people remember that Skunkman Sam is that person that keeps coming up in class. It's the legendary American breeder that was responsible for moving American heirlooms from the US into Europe. Remember that those Dutch boys, they wouldn't have the fire if it wasn't for Skunkman. Never forget that. Look how dark he takes his heads, bro. Like he takes it, he's taking that skunk late, eh? Damn, man.
Dude, and it's so strong. I can't even tell you how strong that stuff is. And then this is a little bit of stuff I made years ago. This was taken before the last final clean, but it shows you this is like 99%. But I didn't get rid of tiny, you know, there's a little color in this stalk. There's a little piece of stalk here. It takes a lot of work to finalize and really clear out. But this is just another beautiful shot of glandular trichomes, you know, showing the different sort of shapes and sizes of them, and how nice they look when you get them into pure form. This one I love as well. This is more sift that I made. Really colorful variety, you know, like it's got the dark heads, it's got the amber heads, it's got the clear heads, it's got the white heads.
Somebody asked if there's ever black heads. Sometimes, yes, the amber gets so dark that it gets blackish, but typically,
it appears black, yeah.
Yeah, it appears black. I'll be frank with you, like I don't want too much of the very, very dark head in there. Not too much, but a little bit is yum. It brings out this more complexity in the flavor than taking it down too young, and it's just all like more monotone flavor. You agree with me, Marcus? Like a little bit, the maturity brings out that. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
you can see in this particular photo, I've taken the picture from like where the stalk was attached. If you go to the middle top and go down 2 or 3 trichomes, you can actually see where the trichome popped off, and it almost looks like there's a smiley face in the trichome right there. Right here.
Yeah, a weird one, a kind of a mean one, but yeah.
I don't know. It's changed for me now. He seems like he's even more detailed, and he's got hair, and he's kind of got a big smiley face.
Marcus, we have to take a very quick break to do our giveaway because we're into the hour. So we're gonna give away at least one cannabis sommelier kit to somebody for free. Hopefully you don't have one. It's the new one that just came in. They're gorgeous. I have mine here somewhere. I'll grab it in a second. So Sharon, I know you're out there. Sharon's going to tell us who won the sommelier kit. So remember, all you have to do is say to us that you're here. All you have to say is after Sharon says your name, you just have to say here, and you get your pack. We'll ship it out to you. So Sharon, who is it that won this month's Chronicles giveaway? Our winner is Kessel. Kessel, are you there still? Kessel, yeah. Okay. There you are. Congratulations. You made it. We'll be sending that out. Sharon, do you want to do a second one, or are we doing just one today? Big congratulations there. Big congratulations. We are probably going to leave it at that. You know, if Sharon really wants to give it oh, look how good he is. You're behaving very well, even solo at home wearing your mask. That's props to you. Props to you. Man, I think we're going to have to continue looking through the pictures in the next session as well. We were getting to, we got the juice. It's a good thing that we got to that juicy section though, man. That you got some shots of the broken off heads. That is just, it's making me salivate, bro. I have to like get off of this and do me a delicious after work dab right now, man. During work dab.
Oh yeah, dude.
Well, I really appreciate everyone's time today. Really, really appreciate your time, Marcus. Thank you for giving us your presence, your time, your energy, bro. it's just such a pleasure, man. Such a pleasure. And Marcus will be back with us next episode when Mike is going to be giving us some footage from Jamaica. I might still be in Canada. I'm not sure. Either way, we're going to be walking through the garden next session. So everything you didn't get this session is still coming to you, okay? Marcus, again, thank you. All of our lovely public and students, thank you all for giving us your time, your attention, and we'll see you next month for the next episode of Chronicles, where we're going to be doing some water extraction, or at least talking about water extraction. I don't know about the setup yet. Marcus and I haven't decided finally. So thank you, everyone, again. We'll see you next round. Marcus, hasta luego.
Hasta luego.